There was a period in my life about a year ago where like every guy I had ever met was like, I make a great bolognese. I was like, what is it about like men thinking they can just like make a great bolognese? And I did have one at my friend Mark's house. He's like, oh, well, I gotta make you my famous bolognese. I'm like, what is it with men and bolognese? And it was fine. But I was like, it's not tomatoey enough. I didn't have enough salt. I felt like it was like clumpy, milky meat.
Sorry, Mark.
Sorry to that man.
Do you still know Mark?
Yeah, I know Mark. He wouldn't be offended.
Video?
No, that was like, it's like his family recipe. Sorry to Mark's family.
Do any of the men in this room have a bolognese recipe?
I don't know. Do any of the men in this room have a bolognese recipe?
My dad makes bolognese.
Is it
Rebecca's father makes bolognese. Is it good?
It's fine.
It's fine. Hello everybody, welcome to Home Movies. I'm Alison Roman and today we are making bolognese. Bolognese is a traditional Italian pasta sauce that people feel passionately about. There are like sort of, defining traits of what makes this a sauce and not just like a ragu. The thing that makes bolognese is a very long cook time. There is meat, there is some sort of tomato product, there is white wine, and there is milk. And I am talking whole cow's milk. Milk from a cow. Anytime you take a classic dish or a classic food item or anything that has existed for a very long time that's deeply steeped in tradition, of course there are going to be opinions on the right way and the wrong way and how it should be and how you prefer it, how it ought to be, how you've had it, how you dream it to be. And so today we're going to make my version.
Do you want to share what makes your bolognese, or do you want to wait?
Well, my bolognese, you can only buy meat from a tube. No, I'm just kidding. Did anybody, it's like a giant hot dog. I'm so obsessed with this. Like, you wish.
Yeah, I love hot dogs.
This is too much hot dog.
What does make
Nice
your
haircut.
bolognese your bolognese?
So the difference between my bolognese and a traditional bolognese, I would say two main things. The two things are that I don't use celery and carrot. Instead, I use fennel bulb. The fennel bulb to me does everything that the carrot and the celery should do. The celery is there to provide body and vegetal flavor. It provides a lot of moisture in the form of liquid. Celery is mostly water. Carrot provides a lot of sweetness and also texture in that it doesn't totally break down into mush when you cook it. So fennel to me does all of that, but in one ingredient. And yes, you're adding additional flavor because fennel has a pronounced flavor. But instead of shying away from that fennel flavor, we're gonna lean into it by adding fennel seed. I'm not trying to trick you by saying there's fennel in this. I'm trying to tap you on the shoulder and be like, there's fennel in this. Okay, let's get cooking.
All right.
This bolognese isn't gonna cook itself.
Kind of will.
Let's see how.
You know what? It will. It will cook itself. It's a pretty hands-off recipe. You know what, David? You're right. All right. All right, so for bolognese, you don't need much equipment, or really any equipment, but you do need a heavy-bottomed pan or pot with high sides. The reason being is that it makes a lot of sauce, A. It's sort of like an involved and time-consuming dish to make, in my opinion. It's not difficult, but it takes time. It takes like 3 hours. And you may as well just make a lot of it. It freezes beautifully. It's like a very cool thing to bring to somebody when they're not feeling well, or if they just had a baby, or if they're immobile for some reason. Coming over with a thing of frozen bolognese, like a bag of pasta and a hunk of cheese, and being like, here's how to reheat it, is like a very good gift. I've done it multiple times, recommend it. So the first thing that you're gonna do is brown your meat. Step 2 is adding things like aromatics. In my case, that's gonna be garlic, onions, and fennel. We're gonna add things like chili flake or fennel seed, or in my case, both. And then comes our liquids, and that comes in the form of white wine, and the white wine is there to bring you acidity. It's not a make or break, but it is something that is traditional, and despite me completely disregarding tradition, I do respect it. So I'm using 50-50 pork and beef. You could use all beef. It would be delicious. I've had a lot of people cook this recipe with impossible meat, and they say it's perfect. So know that it is flexible. Beef fat and pork fat taste very different. And I think that the blend of the two is sort of like it's not overly beefy and it's not overly porky. It's not too fatty. It's like just like a very nice, harmonious blend. And if you're at the butcher shop or you have meat in your freezer and you're like, oh, I've got all pork or I've got all beef, then that's fine too. Or if you try this recipe and you're like, oh, I wish it were a little bit fattier, a little less fatty, you can adjust the ratio of pork, also the type of beef that you're using. I'm using 85-15. I also like to use an 80-20. 90-10 is a little lean for me, if I'm being honest. It's a rich sauce. There's no getting around it. This isn't like a light, breezy, like summer day pasta situation. This is like to me, like winter, still cold, depths of spring type of like meal food that should be rich and like, my words are failing me, but the face says it all. I'm heating up my pot, medium-high heat. I'm gonna add a little olive oil. I'm gonna add my meat. I'm gonna brown it. I'm gonna season it with salt and pepper. A note on the browning of the meat, some people will say it's not necessary. They don't know what it does to the final product. They say it takes too long. They say it dries out the meat. They say you can just throw the meat in with the sauce and it'll be delicious. I don't think that's true. I think that browning meat and the flavor that it creates with the brown bits and the Maillard reaction of sort of caramelizing the proteins, developing flavor that way is like a no-brainer and a very easy way to get a lot of flavor, especially if you're doing it in a dish that doesn't have that many ingredients. You don't need that much oil in the pot, but you want enough so that things don't stick. Sticking equals often like scorching, and that's that like deep burn, like blackened flavor that you can't get out of the rest of your food. So it sort of protects your pot and your food from that happening. So I'm just gonna add this to our pot, and I'm gonna add it all at once. I'm not like working in batches or anything. And then I'm gonna season with salt and pepper. So you're gonna get a lot of fat that's gonna come out of this meat, and that's wonderful. That's a fantastic thing. I do not subscribe to the drain your fat school of thought. The act of making bolognese is effectively a hands-off emulsification process where you are slowly cooking ingredients to combine the water and the fat to make a creamy, delicious, like rich sauce. I think that if you've ever had a bolognese that feels oily or greasy, then that's a tell that they're cooking it too quickly or the ratio of fat and water is sort of out of whack. Like you should never have like a perceptible layer of like thick fat at the top, even though you'll see at the end of this, there's a lot of fat that comes out of this meat. All right, so I'm just gonna periodically like break up the meat with the spatula. I'm using just like a sort of flat edge wooden spoon, which I recommend. I'm gonna let that brown over medium-high heat. The fat's gonna come out, the meat's gonna brown, it's gonna contract, it's gonna get delicious, you're gonna smell it. At which point we will start to add our vegetables, which I'm gonna cut right now. How beautiful, right? It's like a little octopus. So we're not inspecting every single grain of onion here to make sure that they're even and all the same uniform size. We just do want them to be small. It's been about 6-ish minutes, and I'm just gonna stir the meat again because it's starting to brown on one side, and during that process I'm gonna break it up more and just kind of make sure it's getting color all over and come back to my knife work. Fennel.
What are we doing with the fennel? Just
Finely chopping it too. It should be the same size as your onions. This is like a real sloppy situation. All vegetables shrink when you cook them because again, there's water in them and they sweat. The water comes out, but you still want to start with something small. I do like to slice the garlic cloves because I do think like seeing the little slivers of garlic in the sauce is nice, but if you're a garlic crusher or a garlic chopper, you can do that too. It's been about 15 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and add my fennel and onion and garlic. So the reason that I add the vegetables now, it's sort of like the meat is about 50% of the way browned. If you take it all the way brown and then add your vegetables, you're like really cooking the hell out of your meat at like a high temperature. We don't want that, so this is sort of like adding the vegetables to help the meat brown across the finish line. So you see it's like continuing to brown down there? We want that. And just by stirring occasionally, the meat and the vegetables will continue to cook and brown. A lot of steam escaping during this time. We're concentrating flavors. We're browning vegetables. We're browning meat. We're softening. We're cooking. There's no like high stakes moment where it's like, you gotta add the thing at this point, but it's like, you know, we're gonna continue to like sweat the vegetables. You'll notice the volume sort of come down. The meat will be fully cooked, the vegetables will be fully cooked. And at that point, we're gonna add our spices. We're gonna add our fennel seed, chili flake, and then white wine, milk, tomatoes. It's all happening. Yum delish. Our meat is nicely browned. Our vegetables are softened. You can see how much volume went down. And now I'm gonna add chili flake and some fennel seed. If you are sensitive to fennel flavor, you can leave it out, but I do think that it gives a really nice flavor. There is occasionally nutmeg in bolognese, so it's not uncommon to have like a bit of like a floral sort of spice situation, but I'm using fennel seed because this is bolognese my way. I only have fine red pepper flakes right now, but that's fine because you can use that. Bolognese is typically not spicy. That's not a traditional sort of hallmark of the dish, but I like just like a little bit, which again, we're gonna add now so it has a chance to toast in the fat to like bloom the spice. So we'll cook that for like 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever. And then I'm gonna add the wine. And as per usual, when I am talking about cooking with wine, I'm talking about a dry, more acidic wine, never a sweet wine. You wanna avoid anything overly oaky. So I'm adding a full cup of this wine. We're on medium-high heat. I'm just adding it, and it's gonna reduce pretty quickly. You don't wanna reduce it all the way. You wanna reduce it like halfway. And during this process, it's important to take the bottom of your spoon or spatula or whatever and kind of just like scrape like that. We're deglazing. You don't want it to ever taste like boozy or alcohol-y. You want it to just be like sort of sweet and acidic. So from then we add our milk and our tomatoes. This is just a full regular 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. And you can see the texture. It's like not a puree, but it's just like, you know, it's pulverized. And then we're gonna add 2 cups of whole milk and 2 cups of broth, water and better than bouillon. Any combination of that. I'm gonna use water and better than bouillon, so I'm just gonna add 2 cups of water to this. Sometimes when you add it, if like the water's cold and the milk is cold or anything, it'll kind of seize and you can see like the bits of milk, but it'll incorporate and smooth out. So don't be alarmed, but it's not much to look at. I'm gonna add a good spoonful of the better than bouillon. This is sort of like extra credit. I make this often without any stock or bouillon, but because I have it and because I love it, it's going in. I mentioned this earlier off camera, but it bears repeating that these stoves, I call this a regular ass stove, mid to bottom of market apartment stovetop that serves all of my needs just fine. But it is difficult to get a very, very low simmer. So even though I'm on like low visually, I always check to see if I can get a little bit lower. Any sort of like rapid boiling for a sauce like this is gonna give you like tighter meat that doesn't quite break down into that like luscious tenderness that we're after. So do the best you can with whatever stove you have and just go to like the lowest possible heat that you can. Okay, welcome back. It's been about 2.5, 3 hours-ish on very, very low heat. And our sauce is, frankly, gorgeous. It's beautiful, it's thick, it's luscious, it's creamy, it's meaty, deeply savory, just the right amount of salty, not too heavy. And if you can see, like, there's no thick layer of fat at the top of the pot. There's not like when you braise a brisket or short ribs and you can see that like big, thick sort of like thing of fat on the top. That doesn't happen here because we've been slowly simmering and gently stirring, and that whole sauce has sort of like come to this emulsified promised land. I am going to boil my pasta, and we're gonna eat some bolognese. Yay!
Yay.
I keep going to look at David, but he's not sitting where he normally is sitting, which makes me feel unsafe.
He's got to charge his laptop.
He's got to charge his laptop. He broke Rebecca's laptop charger today. That's the drama on the home movie set today.
Cut the confessional.
Okay, this pasta is fun already. I love this shape. I love, love, love it. I love it so much, I want to marry it. It's called fusilli col buco. It is basically just one very long corkscrew. I like this because, as you'll see when we cook it, the like spiraliness of it sort of like catches the sauce in a way that I find really pleasant. But I also really love making this and serving it with rigatoni. Frankly, you can eat it with whatever you want. I truly do not care. All right, so we'll just give this a sec and see you in a few minutes. All right, our pasta's cooked. Per usual, I'm gonna drain the water. I'm just gonna sauce it in the pot that I cooked it in. Bolognese isn't like a skillet pasta, i.e. pantry pasta, or shrimp scampi that you wanna like create sort of a more concentrated skillet sauce and then like use your pasta water, carbonara, to kind of stretch it out and make it like silky and smooth. It's already there. So I'm gonna mostly drain like 90 5% of the water from this pot, leave a little splash at the bottom, and then ladle in my sauce afterwards because the sauce is like thin enough to where it should coat the pasta, and I'm not like cooking the pasta in the sauce after the fact.
Looks fun in there.
It is fun. Look at that shape. Can you even? Mm. Mm. It's so good. Oh, really good. David, you're gonna be so pleased.
Can't wait.
You're all gonna be pleased. He's just been talking about it. It's like each strand properly coated. I'm gonna add a little bit more chili flake and a little bit more pepper.
It's a fun shape.
Have you ever had so much fun? We haven't parmed in a minute. I'm gonna parm.
That's cool. It's not too much fennel at all. And
It's like a suggestion.
yeah, it's like, oh, is there fennel in there? Question mark.
There is.
That's how it feels. It's not too, it's like fatty, but it's not oily. Like you did emulsify the sauce, you know?
I didn't do anything. Cooking did it.
Yeah, science.
Science and cooking and
Temperature.
heat and time. Also, if anyone asks, can you make this like in an Instant Pot or whatever, I don't have the answer. And I'm not gonna say no, but don't do that. We're not doing bolognese like, Kathy, it's Tuesday. I need to like make dinner. I have 30 minutes. Like, don't make bolognese then. And don't begrudge the bolognese for taking so long. Don't be like, ugh, I wish this recipe didn't take so long. It's like, there are a million recipes that exist in the world that can be made in 30 minutes. This is not one of them. This is like a long sort of practice in patience and the alchemy of cooking and how nice that can be to appreciate in and of itself.
I think you're like kind of the Rock, but blue.
Yeah, David said, which I've done. I've done The Rock for Halloween as like a
Really?
lazy Halloween costume.
You dressed as the Rock?
Well,
for
because
Halloween?
he like
Yeah.
it's like this. He's wearing a fanny pack, and maybe it's like this or like
Black
this.
sweater.
Yeah.
We'll put it up.